Good day, Mr. Briggs. Please select an agent for your next mission. Scanning Imperial Agent Database. Qualified agent found. Agent ID, Kazmierski. Agent cover story, creator. Amber Zoned Comix. Details as follows.
Greetings, travelers, and welcome to Traveler Mayday 2022, sponsored by Cyborg Prime Games. You can find me at cyborgprime.com or by searching for my name in the Facebook search tool, or find a link in the video description below. Thank you, listener, for joining us for the 4th annual Mayday Traveler Day event. It's a day we celebrate Traveler and all its additions and offshoots, and all the fun times it's given us around the gaming table with friends and family. I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as Cyborg Prime, and today I'm happy to introduce our guest, Jeff Kazmierski of Amber Zoned Comix. Welcome, Jeff.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
So this is the first time you sat for an interview for Mayday, but you've been here since the beginning at the after party, I think, and have been filling us in all along, so thanks for your ongoing support.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Cool. So, Jeff, tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Jeff Kazmierski, and I'm the creator of Amber Zoned Comix and the founder of the Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute. And in my other life, I work for a software development company developing payment processing APIs. If you've ever bought anything online, you've probably used an API that I have either maintained or developed.
Oh, very cool.
It keeps me off the streets.
So where are you from? Where do you live now? Where do you live now, and where did you come from?
I'm currently living in Omaha, Nebraska, and I was born in Washington State. My dad was a college professor in the 70s. That meant moving around a lot, probably as much as any military family, until he was able to get a permanent position in upstate New York, where my folks have lived ever since, in a small town called Delhi. I grew up surrounded by a lot of nature, which was good considering my dad taught biology and botany. So we went on a lot of camping trips and learned a lot about bugs and plants and all kinds of natural things.
There's a lot of natural beauty back east. I grew up in northern New Jersey, and we'd go camping in the Catskills.
Yep, that's where Delhi is.
Oh, cool.
You might have driven past it.
Didn't know that.
or driven past a sign pointing to it.
Ever heard of Haines Falls?
It sounds familiar, but there's a lot of small towns that up there that, you know, if you aren't intentionally heading there, you probably don't know where they are.
Yeah. Beautiful country. People don't think of that kind of thing when they think New York. They think the city, right? But
I'm constantly having to explain, no, it's not the city.
Yeah. Beautiful state. Back east, there's a lot of my wife and I went to visit New Jersey, and she's like, okay, this is the garden state. Where's the gardens? And where's the farmland? And I was like, because we were, landed in Newark or whatever. Oh, look at those factories. No, those are apartment buildings. So, do you have any hobbies aside from gaming?
Aside from art and language and the language development, my older daughter picked up guitar this over the past summer, and so I used to play guitar and cello when I was in high school. So I bought myself an Ibanez electric about the same time that she started playing.
Oh, cool!
So that I could revisit that and help her learn from somebody who had a little bit of experience.
How's that going?
And extremely well. She started taking lessons from somebody else in the past couple of weeks, and her tutor said it was a great relief to finally have somebody who actually knew how to hold the guitar.
All right, so your tips are paying off.
Yep, they seem to be.
So how did you end up from from New York State to Omaha, Nebraska.
Joined the Air Force.
Okay. Want to talk about that?
Having reached the end of my high school career, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but the only thing I was absolutely sure of was that I did not want to stay in Delhi. It's a town of about 4,000 people, and there's not a whole lot of prospects outside working construction or on the farms.
Sure.
Places, so,
Limited opportunities.
yeah, very limited opportunities. So a lot of us guys joined the Air Force or joined the Army and left home and never looked back. So I went off to Texas for tech school and became an electronic intelligence analyst. And the first assignment I got was to Misawa Air Base, Japan. And
that's pretty far away from
that was
home.
exactly that was exactly where the sort of assignment that I wanted. I didn't join the Air Force to go back home.
Right.
Not that would have been a serious option, especially not for Elin. So I spent a couple of years in Japan and got in with a gaming group over there, a bunch of intelligence analysts and a couple of civilian expatriates living off base. And every chance we got, we'd play D&D or Traveller or Aftermath. Usually one or the other, or all three in some combination after an all-nighter drinking on the town and planning the next game. Nothing like playing a post-apocalyptic role-playing game when you're seriously hungover.
Yeah, we had a similar thing back in the day. We did a Morrow Project as our place, or Gamma World. But I'd seen Aftermath around. I never played it. It was like a tan booklet, the size of the little black books of Traveller, if I remember correctly. Or am I totally off?
Honestly, don't know. I never actually owned a copy of it, and I never saw a copy of the original book.
Oh.
Because the guy who ran it had automated most of the game processes. As I understand it, it's excruciatingly complicated to play. Virtually, nearly unplayable without back then, even without some kind of assistance. So the guy who ran it had programmed all of the major rules and tables and such into his Apple IIc, which he brought to every game session, and that's how we did it.
Uses his DM helper.
It was a definite force multiplier.
Awesome. All right, so you went to Japan and met up with some gamers, and then
Yep.
How did you end up in Omaha after all?
That was my second assignment. Got sent after my 2 years was up in Japan. I got sent to Offutt Air Force Base to work for Strategic Air Command back when that still existed. And I found a game group here, and we played once again anything and everything that anyone was willing to run. Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, Traveller. Ran Ringworld for a while, AD&D, just Star Wars, whatever we could get our hands on, whatever the mood struck us at the time.
D&D and Shadowrun seem to be running side by side with Traveller in a lot of our interviews.
I'm not surprised. There's a strong link between all three.
So, all right. So then, when you got out of the Air Force, what did you? Or how long did you stay in the Air? Did you re-up after you moved to Omaha? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I re-enlisted a couple of times while I was in Omaha, and eventually met the woman who became my wife, and then a couple of years after that, well, while I was in Omaha and before I got married, I got sent to Korea, where I found another gaming group, and we played mostly Traveller. Back at the time, it was Traveller: The New Era. I say gaming group. It was mostly me and one other guy, and we traded off GM sessions.
All right.
But he was a friend from Offutt, coincidentally stationed at Korea roughly the same time.
So that sounds like you've been gaming all along.
I've tried. Kind of fell off that path after I came back from Korea, got married, and kept gaming for a while with my old group. But then I got sent to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and that was an entirely different sort of environment. My first child was born there, the one who picked up guitar over the summer. And we had other things to focus on, and I also got sent TDY and on a lot of deployments. From there, we went to England, where no gaming, but a lot of art, art and language hobbies. My wife is a Latin and classic scholar, so England was kind of a I don't want to say a mecca, but it was a good place for us to be, because she found her people over there, and we discovered the British Esperanto Association.
Oh, cool! I watched a movie in Esperanto with William Shatner.
Incubus.
Incubus. Yep.
Yeah, haven't seen it yet.
I was like, what language is this person's, what is going on here? Because, I like to watch all the weird, Mystery Science Theaters and the Elvira and all those things back in the day. And I was like, this is a interesting language. And that's, I always been interested in different languages, so that kind of piqued my interest.
Yeah, I discovered Esperanto, I think, about the same time that most people do. But back in the 80s, when I read Harry Harrison, and he'd always had in the Stainless Steel Rat books, he always talked about, and Jim DeGritz was always talking about speaking Esperanto like a native or something.
Right,
and
right. I think that's the same place I found out about it too.
Yeah, in a couple of the books, he had that little blurb, that little ad in the back. If you want to know more about Esperanto, write to the International Esperanto Association. I never did, but
I was going to say, was it real? Did you try it?
No, it took me another 20 years before I did that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your wife finds her tribe there in England, and you started doing more art, or how did you have you always been doing artwork, or how did you start? Well, let's backtrack a sec. How did you first find out about role playing games? And what drew you to them? What was the first game you played?
I was introduced to them by a high school friend who was much better read and at the time, and had a lot of interesting hobbies. Among them was this new thing called role playing games. And the first game that he introduced me to was Tunnels and Trolls, which D&D variant with a little bit of quirks added into it. It just grabbed me, the idea that you could create this person that would exist in some alternate world that another person was creating for you to live in. It was like metafiction, reading, like simultaneously reading the book and writing it at the same time. And
good point. Mm-hmm. Go on.
Yeah, I didn't have the vocabulary to describe what I was feeling at the time, but that's what it was, and it just gripped me at a very deep level. This was a shared experience, unlike any other form of entertainment. Like you can go to a movie with your friends and you're sharing the experience of watching the movie, but you're not actually. Each of you is going to come away with a different impression of that movie, and it's ultimately the same movie.
Right.
But with role playing, you gather your friends together, and everybody collaborates on this, on adding to the story as it's happening, and the person who's tasked with creating the world that the story and the story happens in and the characters live in has to adjust the outcome of the story as it's happening. And that's a very cool thing.
Yeah. The collaborative aspect of role playing, making a collaborative story. When I first got into it myself, I thought it was just turned out into a thing where, you know how everybody adds the next line to a story and then it falls apart in a few lines.
Yeah.
You know, but this didn't, and it was kind of like everybody was sharing a brain because they were all doing the same thing, kind of building the same thing, but with their part of it, but it meshed in with everybody else's part.
Yeah, it's like improvisational theater.
Yes, that everybody's got a goal in. It's not a random thing.
Yeah.
Right. So during all this gaming, were you sketching things? I mean, when did you start doing art and associating with gaming?
Oh, I've always done it. What from a very young age. My mom still had some of the pictures that I drew when I was like, I must have been like 5 or 6, and she'd been stashing them away in her attic, and just this really old painting of painting I did of Superman, of course, because
Mm-hmm.
I was a 6-year-old boy in the 70s. When it came to character design, my friends and I would always draw pictures of our characters, and usually we would use references from other artists, or be inspired by the sketches in the game books. Later on,
would you draw your adventures or kind of chronicle them in art?
Not very often. Not very often. We wouldn't. We'd rarely draw scenes. Mostly it was maps and characters, and mostly maps and character sketches.
Okay. And what's your favorite art medium?
Oh, geez.
Like, what do you do your most work in, or like maybe like
Lately
fastest production work?
Lately I do all my production work in digital.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just because of the flexibility and the wide range of tools that are available. If I was gonna try to do the same thing that I do digitally in physical medium, it would require a huge art studio that I just don't have room for.
Right.
And it would require a garage full of canvases and paper and various paints, and I just don't have the time, money, or space for it.
Sure. So
with the iPad, I can experiment with using watercolor and airbrushing and oil paint tools to my heart's content, and there's no cleanup involved, and I can mix the media and as much as I want, and get exactly the result that I want.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good point about having to, especially if you're a multimedia artist, you need a big studio, well, at least in the past. Now everything's digital, and that's awesome. I mean, I've got a recording studio. Yeah, I've got my art studio. I actually have a graphics tablet, but I have a Microsoft Surface I could draw on. I did my starport map of the Type E starport partially on my Surface. But yeah, man, it's really cool to be able to just draw digitally and see what you're drawing on this, on the screen as you draw it, and using a pen instead of a mouse is not a natural drawing tool at all.
And you can take it anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. I haven't taken mine out really. I guess I could go sit out in the park and enjoy nature and just draw or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, do you have a favorite sci-fi book or TV show, or something that inspires you in the sci-fi realm?
So many. Where do I start? No.
What's your all-time favorite?
I have to thank Star Trek for getting me into science fiction.
Star Trek. Who's the original cast? Who's your favorite?
Yeah, the original series. I can't point to a favorite character. My dad would probably say Spock is his favorite, but although I gotta say, I kind of have to thank Nichelle Nichols and her portrayal of Lieutenant Uhura for really informing my impressions of what the future would look like in a science fiction world, because representation matters. And as a third grade white guy growing up in the absolute whitest part of the country in the 70s, there just wasn't a lot of exposure. And when I saw Star Trek and saw what a multicultural cast it was for the first time, I was blown away. Just
Groundbreaking for the time.
It was incredible. It was incredible, and she just brought that wonderful poise and grace and elegance to the role and to the genre, and that to this day informs how I think about the future and how I think about science fiction and how I create my characters.
All right, cool. How does your love for Star Trek kind of connect to your gaming experience with Traveller? Like, what brought you into the Traveller world? Do you remember your first game of Traveller? Did you try to play it like Star Trek? How was that early Traveller experience for you?
Well, what brought me into Traveller was after playing D&D for a while. My buddies and I wanted to play a science fiction game, but we didn't know of any at the time. We didn't have the internet. We couldn't go looking things up. So we decided to make our own, and it was basically a copy of D&D, but with spaceships and laser guns. And it looked and felt a lot more like Star Wars
than Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek got me started, but Star Wars was really the catalyst that made me want to play, because that was just sort of D&D type ordinary people flying around the galaxy having adventures that we all wanted to do.
More adventurous, if you will.
Yeah, it's more adventurous. I mean, Star Trek is cool, but
and they go on adventures, but not like how Star Wars is adventurous.
No, we wanted to fly around the galaxy righting wrongs and fighting evil, or just making trouble in wretched hives of scum and villainy.
Right.
But then I think I must have read a review of Traveller in a Dragon magazine. I can't even remember which one at the time. And I thought, wow, that sounds like the sort of thing I've been looking for. And as luck would have it, there was a hobby store in Binghamton, which was about 70 miles from Delhi, and I would go there every month for an orthodontic checkup, and we'd stop there, and mom would look for craft supplies, and they just happened to have some game books. So I found a copy there, and I read through it and created a couple of characters, and then opened up Starships and book 2, and I was like, yes, this is where it is. This is what I've been looking for.
It was expensive for a kid to save up. The box set was like $25.
I think I paid 12.
Wow.
I think I might have paid 12 or 20. I had a paper route at the time.
Nice.
And that was enough. That provided me with enough petty cash to be able to buy the occasional game book.
that's something I mentioned in another interview, was that something I appreciated was, because I got into this as a teenager, and I worked at a pizza place, I worked at B. Dalton's, you know, um,
Yeah.
but I've always had a job, I've always been industrious, and so I've always had some spending money, and I wanted to spend it on gaming books. And the cool thing about Traveller was you could just buy the books. You didn't have to get a book filled with a bunch of stuff that you weren't going to use. You only had,
Right.
2 or 3 friends. So how many different classes can you play?
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to be a Marine because of aliens or alien. So you didn't need. It was cool because you just, in a modular style, buy the stuff that you were concerned
Mhm.
about in your game.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my first impression was reading through it was like before I got to starships and found the really cool stuff was okay, where's the aliens? This is a science fiction game, right? Where's the aliens?
Right.
And then after a couple hours of thought, realized I can make them. This
Okay.
is not a this is not a setting. This is a framework.
Right.
This is a system. I can add to it, and that was, and we'd always figured that in D&D,
Right.
but to have it encapsulated in a system that was genuinely designed to handle it was a new experience. Where's the lightsabers? Oh, right. If I want them, I can make them.
Right.
You don't like the way something works? Don't like the way the laser rifles work with the huge heavy backpacks. Okay, fine. Make the battery internal.
Right. Say
Have to
it's higher tech.
Yeah.
Next tech level up. The battery pack
Level
is now the
15,
size.
it's all one piece. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What used to be a battery pack is now the size of a pack of cigarettes or whatever. Yeah. That was the cool thing about it. Like if gave you the basic baseline of humans, but if you wanted to make an alien race that was more nimble, then you give everybody a +2 or whatever, and dex or whatever. So.
Then some genius published a whole system of tables and charts for rolling up random aliens in Dragon magazine, and I've lost that, unfortunately. But
Oh yeah.
I probably have a text file saved on a disk that that can no longer be read by modern technology. But
So so it seems to me because you eventually started your Amber Zoned comic that you fell in love with Traveller at some point, and really fell in love with it enough to motivate you to create content in that zone.
yeah,
Um,
after after probably about 20 years of actually not doing art, and 20 years of being focused on my kids, who are both very artistic, by the way. You've probably seen Sophia's
I've seen
production.
Sophia's art. You said
Madeline
your
doesn't.
you said your other daughter is also an artist.
She started drawing when we were in England, and we discovered this extreme natural talent that she had when we went to the British National History Museum to see exhibit of fossilized dinosaur birds.
Uh-huh.
And when she came home, she was drawing pictures of what she'd seen.
Wow.
Not just rough, not just rough, 3-year-old type sketches, but very precise reproductions of what she had seen. And so we said we gotta encourage this, and we bought sketchbooks and paper and pencils, and it's been like that ever since for the past 20 years.
Fantastic.
And so after about 20 years of living vicariously through my children, I don't know what prompted me to go looking for traveler groups on Facebook. I think I think I might have found my copy of the Traveler book, and and that kind of relit the fire. But I just said, does anybody still play this? Wouldn't it be cool if? And I started looking for groups on Facebook, and son of a gun, there they were. I found them. And
the big ones have like 6,000 people, 5,000 people.
Right? Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, yeah.
Because the last thing I remembered about Traveller was Mark Miller's Traveller in about what 97, 98, and then Game Designers Workshop going out of business, and then I just didn't pay attention to any games for a while.
Right.
So to come back 20 years later and find out that it's not only thriving but it's actually growing it was just amazing. And then I started drawing funny little comics. Usually while listening to the sermons during church services, much to my wife's annoyance. But
I'm inspired.
My kids have always done that, and it's pointless to try and stop it, because art is not only an outlet; it can be a focus.
Right.
And so, after drawing a couple of funny little pictures, and then posting them to the groups, and discovering that people that there was an appetite for that sort of thing.
They were well received.
Mm-hmm. And Mark actually gave a thumbs up to one of them. It was a just a little quick sketch of a flux capacitor labeled jump drive.
Very cool to get some attention from the creator.
Yep. Yeah, that was enough to keep me going.
Cool. So how many Amber Zoned comics did you? So all right, so they're well received. Did you like kind of just do them on a regular basis, or compile them, or do like themes or topics? For Amber Zoned?
For the first few months, I drew sort of like loosely Traveller themed, mostly science fiction themed single panel strips in the vein of the Far Side, and I tried to do that a few times a week, and was mostly successmal. But and that carried me through the first few, 3 or 4 months. I still have most of those old ones, and then what really got me going was I accidentally started telling a longer story, and that first strip was an alien couple having a picnic on an alien planet, and they see a shooting star overhead, and it gets all romantic, and the final panel is a spaceship crashed.
I wish upon a star in there. Meanwhile, on the ship, oh God, we're all going to die. Isn't it romantic? That's hilarious. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that led to me thinking more about what happens next, because in any scene, there's always you're always seeing a snapshot of what happens, right?
Right.
You're always seeing what's happening then. So in a single panel strip, you're usually seeing the middle of the story, and you can leave then you leave it up to the viewer to imagine what happened before and what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, I decided to expand and expound upon it, and figure out on a longer term level what happened, what the event leading up to the spaceship crashing was, and what happened and what happened afterward. And that was the beginning of serious storytelling. Well, I say serious. It was there was always an element of comedy there.
Sure, but you ended up with enough idea content to span several panels, but maybe collections of panels.
Yeah, the actual.
You just call it a sheet of comics, like what's a page of comics?
Yeah, just telling the story one comic page at a time.
Mm-hmm. Where do you find inspiration for stories?
It depends. It depends on the mood. Sometimes sometimes I use a randomizer to throw me ideas,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes it's just sitting around bored thinking about or watching a science fiction movie and thinking about what else could happen, could happen in this situation, and how can I make it funny, like the strip of the xenomorph eggs with free hugs.
Right.
And sometimes this
or wrapped in
story,
Easter paper or whatever.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes stories feed back into themselves. The story that I told toward the end, that I wrote toward the end of, I think it was 2020. Yeah, 2020, during the first year of COVID, which was basically Mission on Mithril meets Godzilla. Yeah, the crew gets sent. The crew gets sent to Mithril or they end up on Mithril with and to refuel, and it proceeds generally the way that adventure goes, except um, except it turns out that somewhere along the line a scientific experiment went wrong, and now there's kaiju all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the second one where I introduced Claire, who was my Zhodani expatriate, who initially began as kind of a funny haha character, throwaway character, who a party girl who was also telepathic and clairvoyant, and drank a lot to
Silence the voices.
to suppress the psionic voices.
Mm-hmm.
And during the course of telling the mission the mithril story, discovered that she was not just any psionic. She's actually a Zhodani expatriate who has been living across enemy lines for several years, and she has TBI and PTSD from the war. So that's why she drinks, because she can't really because she doesn't have good control over her abilities anymore. She has not had access to the kind of medicine that the consulate would provide. So she suddenly became a very compelling character.
And then you just started spinning tales about that person because they're
now I'm in the process of gradually and rather slowly telling her backstory.
I noticed you have a huge range of things that you do. I've seen like Imperial recruitment posters, like space pinup girls, different kinds of scenery, like landscape stuff, some funny mix up of like the Lord of the Rings and Traveller, some mashups. Which of those things do you kind of like to do, or do you just switch not genres, but switch styles just to take a break, or is there a method to what you're doing?
I do whatever the mood strikes me.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to experiment with different mediums so that I don't get hidebound into one particular style. It keeps it fresh and flexible.
All right. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries.
Oh. So this year's theme is agents. So I'm asking everybody who's their favorite sci-fi agent, and there was a discussion at the Traveller RPG HQ about what qualifies as an agent and who's an agent. And I was kind of being picky, but I'm going to kind of relax what I said because, yeah, I guess there's Sci-Fi, and that would cover the Avengers and the Saint. They are legitimate,
Yeah.
I'm always thinking in the sci-fi realm, but
Yeah,
point of Travelers is there's all kinds of tech levels. So it could be a 70s spy agent, or it could be a far future agent. So with all that ginormous spectrum. Do you have a favorite agent from literature or movies or whatever, or sci-fi?
The first ones that come to mind are Rick Deckard,
Mm-hmm.
Blade Runner,
Blade Runner.
Eon Flux. If you're going serious sci-fi fantasy, then can't miss Judge Anderson from
Yeah.
from the Judge Dredd comics.
Right. Yes.
And I guess you can include James Bond.
All right.
For covering the wide range of tech levels.
That makes 2 James Bond fans so far in the interview pool. And
the books, less the movies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was talking to somebody the other day. Have you ever read The Destroyer? It's pulpish. Don't. There's a movie about it, but don't watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible and cheesy, but I always imagined the books to just be slightly cheesy and serious. The guys. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. If you ever pick one up, it's fun and funny reading. So tell us about what you've been up to this past year. Did you finish up any productions or take on any big productions?
The biggest production that I took on was actually creating the Zhodani language, Zdetl.
Mm-hmm. What inspired you to do that?
Deciding to tell the backstory of Claire, my Zhodani expatriate.
Oh, all right.
I realized that in order to do it properly, I was going to have to delve into the language that she spoke, and because language and culture are intertwined, they're inseparable. I was going to have to understand something about the place that she came from. So I began by expanding the vocabulary, and from I think the maybe a couple of hundred words currently in the canon. Happy to say that I've reached nearly 800 words now, and that's in no small part due to the help and participation of the guys that I've brought into the Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute. Cannot thank them enough, and they are too numerous to name in the short time I have left. But I without them, I don't think I could have gotten as far as I have in the short time that I did.
Is it based on a specific kind of language, or did you model it after did you model it after Esperanto and come up with some Zhodani words, or I mean, like how?
It's a little of both.
Uh-huh.
The general syntax of the language was defined loosely on the wiki. So we had the basic grammar, and we had the language tables from the books.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of randomization there. The core structure of many of the words and the core structure of the language tables is actually based on the Nahuatl, the language spoken by the Aztecs.
I've recognized that just being
living where I live. A lot of the TLs and combinations, and the Z's and all that, and all those wonderful diphthongs and triphthongs. And then I have borrowed some linguistic structures from Esperanto. The goal is to create a conlang, a constructed language that looks like a natlang, natural language, that was over time regularized.
Okay.
For easy teaching to recently assimilated or colonized people.
I like how you've drawn out these language references. You have like a scene that you've drawn out, maybe somebody eating dinner, and then you've put words to all the the pots and pans and the dinner table and the what's on the plates and stuff, and or whatever the scene is depicting. I think that's very clever, and
thank you.
Yeah, it's gonna make it more like a real kind of a language teaching thing. I've noticed that you have a group, and they meet every Saturday.
We try to meet every Saturday.
Mm-hmm. And then you discuss the language and come up with do you talk about like what topics still need to be made, or like what's priority? How does that go?
We talk about we talk about the language as it's progressing. We talk about we talk about various cultural aspects and how the Zhodani culture might inform how they think and how that affects the language.
Mm-hmm.
And we often digress into other territory, but peripherally related to Traveller. But we always circle back to how we're going to proceed with developing the language.
How big is your dictionary right now? Like how many pages? I thought I saw a comb bound book on one of your pages.
Yeah, that was an early test run. Right now, it is the latest print that I had. Right now, it's up to about 80 to 90 pages.
Wow.
And it's about 70% done.
And are all of those pages illustrated?
There will be illustrations in every chapter.
Oh, okay.
And there will be little cultural discussions in every lesson.
Oh, cool.
Probably needs to be said. This is not, none of it is canon, although I despise the term canon sometimes.
Sure.
But since I post regular updates to the groups and to the page, no one in a position to say so has told me to cut it out. I'm going to keep plowing on.
All right.
Lack of a no is as good as a yes.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of fan made stuff, man, and there's like the Traveller map. I mean, what an endeavor that is, and it's ginormous, and it's made by one guy and his team, made the software, but then people are pitching in to fill out all the subsectors and with data, and it's just this ginormous thing, and there's just so many like forums and blogs, and something about Traveller really sparks creativity and imagination to players. And I'm not sure what it is. Is it just that it's sci-fi, or is it just for me? It's like imagining, like when I roll up a random planet, it's like, and it comes out all messed up. Why is it like this? How can it be? Why is it worth putting a ginormous population on a hostile planet? How do they live there? Why did they come to stay there?
I think there's no other game system that provides the wide range of flexibility that Traveller does. For me, what attracted me to it and what keeps me in it is the sheer amount of world building that you can do. I use it to create worlds for D&D.
Right.
I've used it to create characters for D&D.
Right.
I mean, the only functional difference between magic and psionics is the spelling.
Well, which is kind of managed by like psionic shielding. If everybody else is being affected and you're not, then you've kind of dispelled it. But yeah, it's got a lot of flexibility like that. You're right. Not making up weird places and people and situations and trying to work out that stuff is what always inspired me. So, on your Zhodani Language Institute, are you planning on putting together like a final book and posting it someplace to be downloaded, or how far? And if so, how far away is that? Are there draft copies available right now that people get involved?
There's no draft copy available yet, and that's because it's not finished. At my current pace, I'm hoping to finish it in probably mid-June.
Okay.
At which point it will be available for purchase in print from Lulu.com.
All right.
And I will post a link to all the groups once it's ready. And I would hardly call it finished at that point because once you create something like this and toss it out into the universe, it begins. That's when the real evolution begins. You don't once you create a language like this, you really, and people start using it out in the real world, you really don't have any control over what they do with it.
Right. Yeah, it becomes a living thing, and for it to stay a language, it's got to live, right? Otherwise, it's
Yeah,
going
exactly. And that's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
to. Well, it's a great thing to put out there in the world. So congratulations on that. It's a great idea. Um, let's see. So, what you got? Any plans? We're coming up on our time limit here. You got any plans for the next year? Do you go to conventions or gaming groups or any new productions aside from the Zhodani translation book?
No huge plans that haven't already been mentioned. I've got a couple of manga that I'm working on, and I do have a couple of follow-on books for beginning Zdetl. We've talked about I've talked about doing a collection of flirtations, come-ons, and pillow talk called Zdetl After Dark, which should be amusing.
Mm-hmm.
And the ultimate goal is to let people meet at conventions and actually converse.
That would be awesome.
Language.
That'd be awesome to hear it around it.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I've been taking the Duolingo classes in Spanish, and one of the things, 2 add-ons they have is romance and idioms.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't checked those out because they cost gems, and I'm hoarding mine. But it seems like a popular thing to definitely add on.
Yeah, idioms are a very important aspect of language.
Hey, baby, your stateroom or mine?
Yeah. We did come up with a couple of swear words, which
hey, that's the words everybody learns first, right?
Yeah. If you want to find out, I'll share them later in the group. But...
Yeah. Bring them around for Traveler After Dark.
That's right.
For the event.
I'll save them for the after party.
Yeah, for the after party. All right, cool. Well, how can people find you in your comics? Where can they find Amber Zoned? Where can they get involved with the Zhodani Language Institute?
The best place to look is on Facebook. Just look for Amber Zoned on Facebook, and the Zhodani Language and Cultural Institute, also group on Facebook. As far as gifts, swag, prints, and other stuff to fill up your cargo hold, you can look for me at artpal.com/amberzoned, I believe it is. You just find that.
All right, cool. And people can grab some.
Artpal.com. And I also have a Cafe Press shop. It's the Amber Zoned shop on cafepress.com.
All right. The connection was garbled there for a sec. Give me those last places where people can get prints and things.
Yeah, it's artpal.com. Gifts, swag, greeting cards, and other stuff to fill up your stateroom or cargo hold is at cafepress.com/the Amber Zoned shop.
All right, cool. Well, Jeff, we've come to the end of our interview.
Excellent.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, and best of luck on your projects. I think.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to speak this year.
Absolutely, and thanks for being gracious enough to come. I wish you the best. I think it's an awesome project, and I can't wait to see how it pans out. So, best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Hey, folks, I'm your host, Frank Succardi, also known as Cyborg Prime, and I've been talking with my friend Jeff Kazmierski of Amber Zoned Comix. Jeff, thank you for participating in our 4th annual Traveler Mayday event. I hope you'll join us again next year.
You know I'll be there.
Fantastic. And come by for the after party. Teach us some swear words.
That's right.
All right. And thank you, dear listener, for joining us for the 4th annual Traveler Mayday event. That's all for now, travelers. Until next time, happy traveling.
This data crystal will self-destruct in 5 seconds.